Hey guys, I'm here at ECRM's Global Wine, Beer, and Spirits, and I have two special guests with me. I have Danny Brager and Caitlyn Battaglia from Nielsen's Beverage Alcohol Practice. Did I get that right?
You got it.
Okay, great. Now they both just spoke on what's next in beverage alcohol trends, and so what I'd like to do is cover some of the key points that you guys addressed. But before we get into that, I was wondering if Danny, you could, for the new suppliers out there, if you could give an overview of Nielsen's beverage alcohol practice.
Sure. So, beverage alcohol, it's kind of a unique industry. There's a tremendous amount of complexity, different rules, different states, different categories. And so we have a group that Caitlyn and I are part of, and I lead it, that supports all of our activities in the beverage alcohol area, which means that we're very careful in terms of how we measure the categories, so we measure it correctly. We provide insights in terms of things like the trends that Joe talked about, and we provide some of those insights to some great conferences like the one you have.
Well, thank you. Well, one of those trends that we talked about was transitions and blurring, kind of, particularly with rosés. And I found it was interesting because last year you started talking about that, and now it was just so much more, expanding into so many other categories. So can you tell our viewers a little bit about that and what's happening?
So I think the thing that we generally see is when trends become hot in one category, they start to bleed into others because other suppliers start to see what happens in a particular category and then see if there's any room to sort of ingrain that hot trend into their own category. So something like rosé started with wine. It's growing phenomenally fast, but now we see rosé ciders, we see rosé hard seltzers, we see rosé vodkas, because everyone's trying to capitalize on that pink trend because every day is rosé.
Yep, and you mentioned it's even getting into non-alcoholic beverages. So
My personal favorite next Christmas present is the idea of the rosé deodorant, but you also see things like non-alcoholic, the seltzers like Danny was mentioning, not the hard seltzers, that you do see some offerings that are trying to tap into that pink craze that we're seeing with rosé.
Yeah, I saw the, actually one that I forgot, which I thought was pretty cool. It was a gummy rosé.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Sugar-free, I think it was.
Yeah.
Yep.
It was pretty cool.
So another trend, and this was interesting because I just did a store tour with some of the buyers and sellers of from the Global Wine, Beer, and Spirits, and one of them mentioned cans, how he wants to do more with cans, not from the consumer perspective, but because of space constraints. And you can package a lot more, but you also mentioned that convenience in cans that's growing. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So cans are something we see growing across, particularly craft beer. That's where we see a lot of growth. Craft beer was historically a bottled category, and now we see cans accounting for more than 25% of the dollar growth, which is just continuing to grow. It's growing 50% year over year. Craft beer has really moved towards cans, but you see other categories embracing cans too, whether within the broader beer category, we see cider moving to cans. We also see something like hard seltzer, which is an entirely new category, moved almost exclusively into cans and didn't even consider bottles. And it's really resonating with consumers' idea and want of convenience and this idea of I want a one-stop shopping. And so you see things like prepared cocktails, pre-mixed cocktails, whether they're wine-based or spirits-based, largely coming in cans. You can take them to the pool, you don't have to worry about glass, you can take them to the beach. You can take cans a lot more places, and so they're really hitting on that convenience factor. And just, again, across beer, wine, and spirits, you see this blurring and this pervasion of this consumer need and want for cans.
Canned wines, I went to a summer concert at the lake near us.
Yeah.
We can't bring, they won't let you bring a bottle, but you can bring cans. And so
Okay.
people bring canned wines and have wine where you couldn't.
I just seen
have
at
bottled
football
wine.
games, people tailgating at football
Tailgating.
games. Now it's not just beers, you have wines, spirits, everything. And in the store tours, we saw that too. There was one retailer that had barefoot, the wines in a can. And they also had these wines, they weren't in a can, but they were in a package like plastic. It looked like a glass.
They're like pods.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
There's
I think,
all sorts of,
yeah.
because I think it also goes along with sort of single, I mean, a 375 is maybe more than a single glass.
Yep.
But it's
Okay.
but it's less than a full bottle.
Gotcha.
And I think that's also resonating with consumers, sort of that single serve packaging sort of idea that can sort of fit that mold as well.
And we've
Yeah.
even seen them on premise too. I mean, we found them at a couple places where you see bars and restaurants offering canned wine as an offering, which it's just really tapping into that trend, but it could be something that's going to stick around for a while.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be
It's
surprised.
a trend, not a fad, as we
Yes,
say.
absolutely.
Well, another trend is wellness, and that's something that I know Nielsen covers a lot on wellness and clean labels, and how is that permeating the category?
Well, we absolutely see health and wellness is something that consumers are looking for. We see that even on-premise consumers have indicated that they tend to want to lead a healthier lifestyle, and that comes through in sales numbers for categories that are doing well. Within beer, we see domestic super premium, which is led by Mick Ultra, which is really leaning into that idea of work hard, play hard, and you know, you're going to do something that's not going to mess up with your workout regime or your diet. And then you see things like, even in categories or ideas of health claims, so something like if you're gluten-free and you're looking for a gluten-free lifestyle, there are many categories that might contain gluten naturally, so something like beer, where you see brewers making gluten-free beer, but you also see consumers moving to categories that are just naturally gluten-free. A lot of cider tends to be gluten-free, so it's something that somebody who has a gluten intolerance or somebody who's just leading a gluten-free lifestyle can come to these categories within Beval, and it's their health and wellness is influencing their decision on what they're going to purchase.
Cool. And actually, and you'll have people also shifting from beer maybe to like vodka sodas or something
Exactly.
that's less
Well,
filling.
the hard seltzer category, which was nothing 2 years ago, is
Yeah.
about $300 million now. And there's certainly a large amount of health, there's health aspects to that.
Gotcha.
They tend to be very much tout the fact that they're low in sugar, they're low in carbs,
Yeah.
it is very much a vodka seltzer in a can, and
Okay.
it is, many of them have prominent labeling and messaging around this
Yeah.
to really highlight the fact that if you're looking for these things in a beverage, they offer them, and you see examples.
Kind of like the
in
call-outs in the grocery department.
Yes, yes.
I mean, some of these categories, they just explode, and that's just a great
Yeah.
example of an exploding segment. Didn't exist 2 years ago.
Cool. Well, what's next? What do you guys?
The sky's the limit, Joe.
I know. I
You
know.
know
We
what's
talked.
next.
Yeah, we talked about CBD. I know we've talked a lot about CBD lately. What's going on with CBD and even THC in beers?
Well, there's, with the THC type products, we're starting to see some companies, including some big ones like Lagunitas, entering the category in the cannabis in the cannabis category with a product like Hi-Fi.
Yep.
That
And this
only
is
get
the stuff that
dispensaries.
gets you high.
This is the-
Just to get clear. That's
So there's like the alcohol out is taken out, the THC is in. So
Gotcha.
and then CBD products. Caitlyn, you talked a bit about
Yeah,
that. In the
I mean, we
presentation.
see products that CBD is popping up in beverages more
Yeah.
and more. It's definitely something that's can be distributed just because it's that end of the marijuana
Yeah.
plant. And we also see just hemp and hash inspired products, so they don't actually contain CBD or THC. A lot of times it's the aroma that they evoke
Yeah.
is really what they're tapping into, and so they're products that are meant to smell or evoke the experience of THC or marijuana products, but are really and truly just a craft beer at the end of the day.
and taking advantage of that trend, the way you slap natural on something,
Yes.
sales go up. And even if it's inspired, it doesn't have anything in it.
Correct.
Will drive some sales.
And I think, just big picture, we certainly talked about this in general, but convenience,
Okay.
flavor, and flavor diversity, and health and wellness, just I think are trends that, there are true trends. They are not just faddish things, and companies will be looking to take advantage of those things that consumers are looking for. And then we also talked about that consumers are looking to drink better. They're not necessarily drinking a lot more, but they're looking to drink better, however they define
Yeah,
better.
yeah.
And you can't forget the importance of online and the fact that brick and mortar and online shopping are just blurring even more. And so that idea of engaging with the consumer online, whether it's through something like social media tactics, where you're
Okay.
just meeting consumers where they're at, or even physically selling products online,
Yeah.
all of that is growing in importance and influence over the Bevel industry.
It'll be interesting to see how that part of it changes over the next few years.
I think it's a big issue because it may not be keeping up to the pace of
Yeah.
online in other categories.
Okay.
And I think that's something that this industry has to think a lot about. How do we keep pace with the online world?
Great. All right, well, thank you, Danny and Caitlin, and here you go, Nielsen's beverage alcohol practice.